Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Mark from TCG Discussions. Welcome back. We're going to be doing a April 1st ban list discussion video today. Let's get right into it. So what was banned? We got Gecko, Moria, Jinbe, Ice Age, and Kingdom Come. So up here, we're going to do the decks that I feel that are affected by each card that's banned, and then we're going to talk a little bit about it to start. Lucci, BY, and Smoker were the biggest ones affected by this ban. 8-cost Gecko ban was a fan favorite to be hit and was kind of a long time coming in the eyes of the community. I will be honest, black is kind of cooked unless you're a Lucci now. I'll explain that later. This is really weird to hit, but Lucci won Worlds, and this is a key part of the problem for sure. Like, I'm not going to argue that. Gecko is a severe nerf to these decks, and Lucci and BY have been dominant since their inception due to this card. We have 4-cost Jinbe. The decks affected by this the most, I believe, are Boa and Dofi, and you could possibly argue Zoro Sanji, but like, they were never really a part of the meta. Jinbe drastically slows down Dofi. However, he can simply play 2 bodies or 2-cost Teach, which is kind of a problem. He will have to do it in later turns and not right away. So he can't just like Teach on 3 Dawn and then use the ability to put Jinbe on top of life and flop Jinbe into evil or something like that. So he can't do it right away, but he could do it the turn after. What this does to Boa is it ruins her pressure and basically makes you soft, the best blue deck in Op10. Ice Age decks that were affected by this, BY could be up here, but it affects these two, and I raised Smoker a little bit above Lucci because it's a Navy card. So Lucci and Smoker and any other black KO deck. Ice Age is the second worst hit on the list. I understand why it was hit. It's a 1-cost reducer for 5 with a KO 3 or less trigger, which is a big deal. For this cost, what it's doing, and this trigger, it's a lot. I mean, it's a really, really strong card, right? However, black is supposed to be removal, and this has literally no good boss cards now, with 8-cost Moria gone. I will make some arguments for Lucci later, but Lucci is now default big diff for black outside of Teach. If you're not Lucci, I really doubt that you're going to be a black KO deck that's better than him without some absurd leader effect. Kingdom Come, Reiju. This is literally the worst hit of all time. This ranks right up there and is far greater than banning the 1-cost Searcher Nami. This is the most egregious hit on this ban list I think I've ever seen in this game. And Red Rock is still here. All of Yellow is a victim because of this hit. I don't know how Yellow can address any bodies and what style it's supposed to have without this card now. And by any bodies, I mean the big ones, right? I really don't know how you address a 10-cost Shanks with this card gone. I really don't. Decks that survive. Guess what, guys? These decks both survive. Okay, these decks are actually still viable and good. Why? Dofi's game plan is to just constantly swing 7, right? And play bodies that do things and then affect you. Well, the issue is that because this exists to a turn, is still viable. He still has Pudding, he still has Grabley, he still has Femur, he still has Josu, Kaido. Like, if Yellow was prominent, this card's like way stronger now, right? Because Rego is gone. This card is like way, way better. But here's the issue, man. Look at this list. It looks like nothing even changed. That's the problem. This deck can probably still adjust to the nerf of Jinbe and find new ways to be powerful. I don't think that Dofi is completely dead. I think that he's just not as oppressively wide as he was before. But I think he's still very, very strong and good. Lucci, look at this list. Now we just play 4 of this, and against low to the ground, he's still the best. Like, this is just 1, I'm gonna have 2. And this list right here, right, this card is an 8-9, is really, really strong, right? You can still kill 2 cards with this and get that 8-9 body. Now, you don't get a blocker like Rebecca, and you don't get to do the whole shebang, but you can still do a lot. And I think another thing that people don't realize is Rebecca, Hina, Lucci, or Spandine, if Lucci's in your hand, really broken, really broken. So there's a lot that this deck can still do. Despite these bans, we still have Jack, we still have Kaido. So that is to say that, like, if Teach is in the meta, Kaido can still be addressed by Soap Sheep or Tempest Kick and a Leader Swing in Kaido. And then one more Lucci list. Here's a pure CP Lucci list, a lot more pure. With Ice Age gone, this is a little bit more of an important 2K against the aggro that's to come, and we'll talk about that later. But this right here now becomes like, I think, an auto default, at least in a CP variant, because Lucci doesn't have a good way to address big bodies anymore through like activating multiples of these and some like Kaido nonsense. So this may be another way that the list goes. Low to the ground stuff is handled by Lucci and Soap Sheep, and then this card handles all of your big cards, and like you need this at 4 to like do that. Got some 16 pistol here to kind of help out. And then we still have like the good stuff with Brokaku. And these are our event reducers that were all searchable by this. And Rebecca into Spandine into Lucci, or Rebecca into Brook is still really strong. And we got Suo for extra reduction. Jack and Kaido are kind of self-explanatory. This is just like a quick blueprint that I came up with, but I overall think that this is where he can go. So I think both of these decks kind of survive. Here are the winners of the format. We're going to go over each one. So Blackbeard obviously won because he didn't get hit in any way and he gets more support in 10. Usopp wins because Lucci and Dofi, I guess, are kind of favorable for him, but nothing that he could use that's like broken, like Pudding or Crab Leader or Red Rock were hit, right? Shanks is a massive winner. I think this is going to be like top 2 in the game. It's going to be like Shanks, Blackbeard, and Reiju, I think. I think it's going to be between those 3 decks. Red Zoro obviously got a lot better with Lucci getting nerfed, Ice Age being gone as a trigger. Like, he's really, really strong. And yeah, we'll talk about what they should have also hit if they're going to hit Jinbe. Reiju is extremely powerful, and I have a whole section dedicated to her later, so we'll talk about that when we get there. Purple Luffy's probably going to get crapped on from here, honestly. This deck is probably dead for the foreseeable future because we're about to enter a severe aggro meta. That's my prediction. I predict that we will be entering a severe aggro meta, but he's a winner because he didn't lose Gum Gum Giant, and the future variants didn't either. Bello Betty is a severe winner of this because she's good into Blackbeard and she's good into Usopp. She's okay into Shanks and okay into Zoro. Not really sure who actually wins this, but she's really good into Purple Luffy. So I think Purple Luffy's pretty much going to get phased out. Bonnie is also a monster. She's definitely a top 5 leader now. I think that Bonnie is probably, she could be at the top. Like, she honestly could be. It just really depends. In a meta where she's aggro, Electrical Luna, Carrot, and Kid are just way too strong. Shanks is also going to be kind of aggro, so we'll see how she can kind of deal with that. Taming those bodies down. In a world where Pudding isn't played as prominent because Dofi is like too bad to play, this is also very good for her. Lucci, he could be a winner if all the low aggro decks are here. Reiju's a little bit different because each G's a 7 cost, and that's kind of hard for him to handle early, but he could be a winner if like all of his competition is just Red Zoro and Bella Betty. But even these matchups got worse, he's still the best to address them. Kalgara is also a winner with Dofi gone. This deck gets a lot better. Kalgara just basically is like the Purple Luffy of yellow, but like way dumber because like his bodies just get wider a lot faster with not as much like varying top end that's like super good. Red Green Smoker, obviously going to be really good. We'll see how it pans out in the face of the new meta and not having to play around Dofi and BY, hopefully. Purple Yellow Pudding, Cali Curdy, and Yellow Kid are now the best yellow decks in the game because Raigo's gone. Some character cards, 9 cost Zoro. If you don't have this, I'd pick this up now. Now that Raigo and Ice Age don't exist, like, this card is way stronger than he ever has been. Bello cards, the deck is crazy. Lucci is still good into her, but there should be a drop in Lucci, which lifts her up. Biggest losers. Gecko Moria, it's dead. Rest in peace. Hitting 8 cost Moria essentially closed everything this deck was intending to do, which is constantly have access to the 8 cost Moria and outvalue your opponent. Coupled with the 8 cost Moria hit, Great Eruption, and Ice Age, he really doesn't have an identity as a black deck and loses out on his value route due to 8 cost Moria being banned. They literally murdered this leader. I didn't put Perona on here because I think like the green side can still help, but I'm going to be 100 with you. This leader indirectly got completely destroyed. There is no hope for this leader anymore. BY Luffy is now unplayable. He has no board spam, no Raigo, so you can't answer big bodies, and no Ice Age to help out either. This was a literal triple hit against him. If Raigo was gone, like Ice Age into some other form of reduction, and the Rocket Luffy ability to pop would have been how you address a big body. That's gone. Additionally, it can't be nearly as defensive and is hyper reliant on Hyper Filter, which is going to get turned off by Teach. Like, the Teach matchup is not completely unplayable, and Teach is definitely top 3 deck in the game. BY can also now be aggro down without fearing that Moria is just going to come down after 10 dawn and make the board completely immune, and it's impossible to win. His late game was full of nothing but a hard -3 to become 9k, so 2 babies from hand plus a leader pitch to heal, and with all that, I think he's dead. He's completely unplayable, and thank God he's gone from the meta. I do hope they do something to give him a little help, but I don't want him to be whatever it has been this entire time. Lucci, he is a loser, even though I think that he is still the best black deck in the game that's not Teach. Obviously, without Gecko, things are a lot slower, even though he is the best removal deck in the game. However, Lucci will be able to pressure down more and still crack boards easier that are low to the ground than any other deck in the game. game. It's not close. This is a free minus. He gets cards in the trash, and Rebecca still exists. He's still incredibly powerful. He lost Ice Age, which is another tool to help his game plan, which is really unfortunate. It's a double whammy on his end with the Gecko and the Ice Age hit. He is now hyper reliant on Rebecca, which may be a focal point switch for the deck. I could see Mancherry possibly coming in to get the Rebecca's back to make this a lot more annoying. He will struggle against tall decks like Bonnie and Shanks, for sure. His Bonnie matchup is just indefinitely worse. It's not close. Especially with the addition of Tashigi and the new Smoker, this is just going to be a straight wash. I imagine Bonnie is like now probably favored. She gets like Zoro on the board. What does he do? Like, it's just going to be bad. And he is now just the best black deck in the game outside of Teach. Boa Dofi, they are big losers on this. No Jinbe drastically hurts, all aggression. Some matchups are just not winnable anymore. Do not think that Doflamingo cannot beat Shanks at all. He was 50-50 before, and the only reason why it's 50-50 is because Jinbe to play out a 6 cost, and now Jinbe doesn't exist. See, Control Shanks should just absolutely wipe the floor with Dofi, and it's not funny. With Boa 5 cost Kuzan and Blackbeard, which will be a top deck, will be her hardest counter because Boa focuses a lot on removal while Kuzan can't be removed. And so she doesn't have like any good answer to that card. And to top it off, like what they'll do is just play multiple Kuzan, keep swinging with leader, and then they're just gonna like sack the Burgess to the trash, and then they're going to sack the Kuzan, draw a couple cards, and then like play the Burgess after getting like value swings into her life. Boa just got hard nerfed due to Dofi, which is kind of unfair to her because like the Jinbe hit was to address him and she just lost pressure. Like now she just doesn't have as much pressure. And Tukashi should have been hit instead of the Jinbe. Manel is probably the biggest loser on this list by far. Manel is officially dead. He has no clean answers to big bodies with Raigo ban and will consistently get pressured down by those bodies in the late game. It is as simple as that. There is no answer. If it's not an 8 cost or lower, Manel has no answer. This is a massive problem. There are certain decks that literally can just play cards that will walk Manel down the entire time or interact with them in any way other than attacking over them if they're rested. This is a huge issue. This ban for him is massive. Even using this effect, he still has technically 2 life, but now it doesn't matter. It literally doesn't matter. Any deck that relied on Raigo will subsequently follow his fate. If it's above 8 cost categories range, you're getting cooked. There is no clean answer, right? Like there's no answer to Rush Shanks. There is no answer to the 10 cost Shanks of Pops. There's no answer to 10 cost Teach. There is no answer to so many broken cards. 9 cost Shanks in Bonnie. Zoro. There are no answers to these cards. They're cooked. They are completely cooked. Yellow as a color indefinitely suffered because of this. Yellow's fighting chance was this against a lot of the meta. It is now gone. The format that is bound to be full of aggro, he may have a spot, but with meta where Blackbeard is literally at the top and no Raigo, will be pretty impossible for Enel to win the matchups that were even close. And he definitely doesn't beat Blackbeard anymore because of the lack of Raigo. Smoker, he's also a massive loser here. He lost Ice Age, which is searchable, and now has a much harder time efficiently handling big bodies. It was literally the only reduction event that he played in the deck, and now it's gone. You could play Tempest Kick, but it's not searchable. There's that. Hino will probably be the replacement for this, but it is incredibly dawn inefficient for less reduction compared to Ice Age, which is the point of the ban. But like, again, Smoker was only removing 1 body per turn. Hitting him in the way that they did is just like, it's really hard. It hurts him really bad. And Gecko wasn't necessary for him to win games, but it massively helped him. That 8-9 body on top of like the Rebecca Brook and like whatever else he played was like really strong for him. And now both Gecko and Ice Age are gone. Blackout is a color outside of Teach. My era begins with Teach is what the theme of this ban list should be. With 8 cost Gecko gone, there's now a massive void at the top end that cannot be filled for this color. I mean, I'm sorry. Anyone trying to justify Kuzan, Sabo, or anything else is just smoking crack. Gecko is like way better than all of them because of what he did, and I am like sorry to say this, but I don't understand what the point of playing a black leader that is not Usopp now. Usopp is probably now the best black leader in the game that's not Teach, outside of maybe Lucci. I don't know, but I don't even understand what the point of playing Lucci is when like Usopp exists. Usopp is just him now. And while I understand that Gecko was massively broken in Lucci and BY, there were walk back bans that could have happened to dampen the power of Gecko instead of him. Gecko was only as strong as what he could get, and now basically every deck that is in BB is completely unplayable unless you're Usopp. Lucci, which is one of the problems, will be the only survivor out of mono black to come out of this. If you're a mono black deck, you're cooked. Gecko was your only hope, and now you're screwed. Misses, things that they missed on the list. Dofi can still span multiple bodies with this stupid card, this 2 cost Teach. Because it exists, I don't think Dofi will be unplayable, it will still remain viable. The question is, will there be another top meta adjustment that the deck does to stay at the top? If so, this card will be at the center of it, and it is a clear miss to be on the list. They literally could, and we'll talk about this later, but they literally could have just banned this card instead of Jinbe, and it would have been the correct hit by far. If the only thing is like, well, this card's not broken outside of anything that's still Flamingo, so why would we hit it and not just try to address Jinbe, which is the problem of flopping this card out? You guys are missing the point of what this card does. What this card does is allow the leader to be a 7k at 5 Dawn after playing a 4 cost. That's the problem with this card. And playing a second body. Speaking of second bodies and something you can play at 5 Dawn and then use that effect, we've got Pudding, 4 cost Pudding. Why Reiju was banned before this is just beyond me. I'm like dead serious, man. I was just actually having a conversation with my friend yesterday about what deserves to be on the ban list and what doesn't. And this card was one of the #1 cards I was arguing for. You know what neither of us were arguing for? Reiju. And why Reiju is on this list before her is just completely stupid to me. It is still a unilateral hand shuffle that can be abused in Dofi and other blue decks, aka Usopp as well. This is much, this seems like a much bigger problem than Ice Age or Reiju. Like, I mean, I don't know who is like, if you had to ask me if Reiju, Ice Age, or Pudding could be banned, I'm gonna guarantee that most of the community is gonna say Pudding if it's between these three, that they have to be banned. I don't know anyone who would honestly argue for Reiju. If someone can even explain in a coherent, meta relevant way why Reiju is banned in the comment section, please leave it down in the comment section below, because I am just lost as to what I'm staring at here and why this card is still in the game. Also, look at the face on this card staring at you. Look at it. She knew she wasn't getting banned, and she is smugly smiling, and she would continue to terrorize the game. And she's dumb and Reiju, which we'll get into later. Mrs. Red Rock. I have no idea why Reiju was hit, but this wasn't. Like, if this is where we're going to adjust cards by hitting Reiju, this card should have been banned long before, bud. Long before. They were going to ban Reiju, this card should have gone. Bottom line. Has the strongest form of removal, bottom decking, at the same Dawn cost with no life cost. Has a static bottom 4 deck. Trigger, 4 costs are the most prominent cost characters in the game, and bottom deck has the strongest removal. Reiju only is as good as your life. It is KO, all right? And to make matters worse, at the end game, that trigger is pretty much useless. So I'm not really sure what we're talking about here. Why? Just why did they hit Reiju? Oh, I am so salty that Reiju was hit. Another miss, Grab Blade. Another problematic card that they can still remove from the game and will still be good in Usopp. Still bottom deck 2/6 or less for 7 Dawn with Teach combo and Dofi, which is the most heinous and annoying bullcrap part about this card. Has trigger 5 or less bottom deck. Usopp can play Grab Blade, Red Rock, and Pudding. Again, how was Reiju hit before this card? Again, someone explain this to me. Explain to me why yellow deserved to unilaterally get axed in the toilet and we still have Grab Blade and Red Rock in the game, and Pudding. Someone make that make sense to me. This and this are not in the same conversation, bro. They're just not. For one more Dawn, you get the bottom deck 2/6 or less. At the point in this game, when you can play this on curve, it's completely ridiculous. For 8 Dawn with Dofi, with Teach on board, you can bottom deck 2 and still flop out a card. Okay. 8 cost Kid. I think this is a miss, but we will see how the meta shakes out to an adjustment with this list overall. That's what I mean by with this, like, and Kid being a part of it. BB still counters this card somewhat, so it could be good to stay. It also counters GP Luffy and provides Scream with some tools to fight it, which GP will be a force. So I imagine, because like in an aggro meta, this is an aggro deck, right? GP Luffy is an aggro deck. So in a meta where Kid exists to counter GP, like, I'm fine with that. But yellow cannot get around this card easily anymore, even more so with Reiju. In fact, I'm going to tell you right now, if this card is played, yellow is completely screwed. There is no way for them to get rid of this card. You can't Kid this anymore because of Tashigi. You can't attack over the Tashigi once it's rested because Kid exists, and you can't get rid of the Kid through other means because Rosinante is probably going to be next to it too. It really is a broken card that should have been looked at, to be honest with you. I imagine Bonnie will rise to great prominence because of this card's existence. Another miss, 4 cost Rebecca. Rebecca is effectively their problem in every black deck outside of BY. Should have been banned first before Gecko, and can still play Bandai combo without Gecko. Lucci is still a relevant deck due to this card living. Manshare will be a card that picks this card up and spams on combos, and so strap in for more Lucci. I think if we enter an aggro meta where everything is like really low to the ground, Lucci is obviously going to be very, very strong into that, right? Like, you have Rebecca Spin and Lucci, so you have a little bit of offense generating with some defense, and you're removing 2 cards. Lucci is still going to be the best at removing multiple bodies. Soap Sheep is now probably going to become a staple, which means that you can still get rid of 2 cards with Lucci. Another miss is Spandine. Could have gone instead of Gecko, and this just makes Lucci a tier above every other black deck. I'm sorry. This is literally the only reason why Lucci is the best mono black deck. Like it just is. I do think that Usopp is now better, but this card should have never been printed. Not with Rebecca existing in the game. This card drastically, and I mean drastically raises Lucci's ceiling above every black deck, and has at the very least an EVO1. It's a Rebecca target, which is still around, and it deserved to be banned. I know Lucci won Worlds. They should have banned this card instead of Gecko, and should have just banned BY and Dofi and left everything else for everyone else to play. Miss 3-cost Chopper. Strap in, because we're gonna have a conversation about this card. This card should have been banned. If you're gonna be like talking about banning Jinbe, and I know there's gonna be some clown that wants to argue that this card is completely fair and should be played, Zoro, or Zero, as I'm gonna call him several times, is again a set 1 leader that's probably about to take over the meta. This card is the problem with it, and the problem is that Zoro to be good doesn't even need this card. It's getting a bunch of other support in other ways, and I think that this card should be banned. This card definitely should have been banned if Jinbe was. I think as far as aggro spam goes, I get why Dofi was hit, because it was the more powerful and prominent deck, by far. Okay, no one's gonna argue that. But this just invites Zoro to be overly powerful with this card's existence. This is now, like, if you're an aggro player, this is now your new wheelhouse. That or Bella Betty. This card can be played off the top of the deck with Shut Up and Come With Us, creating the same Dofi problem. You're playing multiple bodies, you're gonna play this card, you're gonna swing it, look at the top 5. And the problem with this card is, look at what it does. It looks at the top 5 to play a 4K. Well, you're like, well, it's a 4K. Well, if I get a 4K off of this and I play Zoro, then I just have to attach it on, I can just swing at your 5, okay? And then they got other tools, like the new 5-cost Luffy, that when it attacks, it gives one of your leader characters Arrested Dawn. This is really broken with this card, okay? Because it's gonna make that a 6K, it's gonna make your other cards a 5K, they're on the board, or a 4K if they're a 3, and make your leader swing for 6. I think this card is way too problematic to exist, and Shut Up and Come With Us shouldn't exist. You shouldn't have cards that play cards out of the deck, ever. I don't know why they thought this was a good idea, but they made 2 cards, one that searches this card basically to play this card, and this card then plays other cards. I have no idea why they did that. It actually makes attacking Zoro feel impossible, while he just gets to beat you down and play a bunch of bodies to the board. If Lucci nerfs, he won't be as prominent, which is Zero's hardest counter, and the Ice Age ban actually helps this deck against its worst matchup, because the trigger could KO this card, or the 3-cost Chopper blocker, or something else on the board, taking the aggression away. Even though Ice Age itself, like for the 5-cost reduction, was a little bit tough to justify against this card, but it wasn't against cards like Dragon or the 5-cost Luffy that's going to be played. So get ready to see this card a lot. And I'm not going to lie to you, I think this card is completely stupid and ban worthy. They should either ban Just Shut Up and Come With Us, or just ban this card. Meta adjustments. So these are my opinions on what I think is going to happen in the meta. We've got several slides, so strap in. So Shanks and Blackbeard will take over the meta. With the addition of Kuzan and Liberation Event, Blackbeard has a much stronger tools to curb the Purple Luffy matchup. And if Dofi's gone, then Blackbeard is just going to be really strong. Shanks is 50-50 into the matchup, and I personally feel that it is winning for BB if they can deal with the Luffy. So what I mean by that is the 5-cost Luffy. And I also think that overall Blackbeard just beats Shanks, but it could be a little bit closer if he's like more on the aggro rush side. Be a little bit more 50-50 and closer to that blend. But the problem is like control Shanks always beats aggro Shanks, and aggro Shanks is probably not going to race well against some of the aggro decks, and we'll talk about that here in a bit. However, Shanks straight up gets an invite to take over the meta. A lot of people really don't understand this, but by removing Lucci, you actually allow Shanks to just have no bad matchups, like at all. Even if Dofi played correctly beat this, you're not beating it anymore. Furthermore, Blackbeard is now default the only deck that can really contest him, unless other aggro decks like Reiju or Bella Betty can just beat him into the ground before he can get set up. The control variants will absolutely murk the dog water out of some of these matchups. And the other thing is that even if you want to justify, like Lucky Roo is extremely powerful against Bella Betty, right? Like even if you want to say like Bella Betty is like really good in him because of Karasu, like Lucky Roo is a protection of an attack, and you also auto lose a card that's 6K or less. And then Ben Beckman comes down and trashes a card. And then like, you know, Marco can come down and KO a card. Like the control variant's probably going to be very good. And then if it's 5K or less, if Newgate comes down, it's dead every turn, right? Like there's just a lot that he has going for him. And his hand size can also blow up to be super huge and counter out of stuff and do whatever. Shanks can be built for control or rush to address Blackbeard easier. Both have their ups and downs, but the reality is Dofi is basically removed by the meta by Shanks. The reason is if Shanks is popular, the matchup has to be way harder for Dofi without Jinbe. and that's just the bottom line. Shanks was 50-50 into Dofi, and that's only because Jinbe exists. With Jinbe gone, it's curtains. And if Dofi's not around, Lucky Rue's definitely gonna come back, because Lucky Rue is like one of the worst cards in the Dofi matchup, but it's like strong everywhere else. Another meta adjustment, Purple Luffy. Purple Luffy's gonna 7th meta is a top contender. What I mean by that, like, is he's easy to play and can be adjusted to easy to play in the meta. So like, even if he has to change the way that he's currently playing, he didn't get touched. So like, he's still going to be really strong. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see how Purple Luffy players like adjust. He still has everyone's favorite Gum Giant. However, Aggro will be prominent in the meta and could keep him down due to Dofi being gone and Lucci being hurt. More meta adjustments for yellow. If you're yellow, these are like your best decks right now, in my opinion. Okay, so Yellow Kid, Yellow Purple Pudding, and Yellow Katakuri are now the best yellow decks. Kid is well positioned because he is strong and has clear game plans that, when executed, is devastating. Pudding and Kata have great heal effects, but will probably struggle into a BB meta. Kid is probably best positioned in the meta as BB hard counters Pudding and Kata, and Kid can actually have winning chances against Blackbeard if he draws correctly. Continuing on with Aggro. Aggro is probably going to come out in droves now. If Dofi is removed from the format, this opens the floodgates to all their Aggros is more broken. Like, they are just more broken. This is kind of a problem because Dofi kept all the decks in check, and we will have to see the pendulum swing of what happens. Every single one of these decks gets better because Dofi is gone and Lucci is gone. And for all the people who are hating on Rob Lucci's existence, I hope you're ready to strap in to see games ended in seconds with you not being able to do anything about it. That's all this meta is probably about to turn out to be, unless you're Shanks or Blackbeard and can get some of it under control. Decks I expect to see at a minimum are Zoro, Bella Betty, Aggro and Reiju, and they are extremely well positioned in this meta without a doubt. Due to Black being significantly weaker with Ice Age and Gecko gone, all of these decks get extremely better. So I'll explain why that's the case. Just starting up here, Zoro's Chopper plays a card rested, which means like you can counter a crack into the card with your leader and then like maybe KO something else with an effect. But when Gecko comes down, the problem is once you start playing Gecko, the swings off of like Rebecca, Spandine, Lucci plays and getting rid of 2 cards, and to top it off, right? So you get rid of 2 cards, you get a 4/6, an 8/9, and a blocker. That blocker means a lot in these aggro matchups because it's what's preventing Lucci from getting punched down in the final moments of the game. And the question is will you have another blocker or another recovery blocker in order to deal with the new threat played? Like, if you're playing Gecko, that means their next turn they could probably be playing Dragon, for example. So if the board's not clear, then you might have a lot of problems. Now, the issue is the counter crack, right? If the board is wide somewhat still, if it's not been shored up enough, then the Gecko cracking into one of the weenie cards is for sure dead. And this applies to almost all these cards, minus Calgara with like the 8K Calgara card. But the issue now is that with Ice Age gone as a trigger to check some of the lower to the ground cards here, and Gecko being gone to board flood that can counter crack and KO cards on the turn to buy some time with the blocker, they're just going to run over Lucci a lot easier now. This is kind of a big deal, and it makes all of them extremely better. And now Dofi will probably not be as prominent and probably lose these a lot harder because he won't be able to develop as much pressure as they do in order to counter crack at the board and not just actually get ran over or have his own board ran over and then get started out. So it's going to be a pretty rough meta. And I'm only circling these 3 because we need to save her for last. But the bottom line is that we may be searching for answers to these decks all meta. Meta adjustments continue. We've got Reiju. So get ready, this deck is going to be extremely powerful. It is hyper consistent, extremely strong, high rolling deck that can tear you apart in the early game and leave you in the dust. If they pour GGG twice, you're cooked. The only deck that can stop this is Blackbeard. And you think that Doflamingo was bad. The reason why this deck wasn't as good as Doflamingo is because of Pudding and Doflamingo's counter spam. Doflamingo has a much easier time putting out more bodies to the board than she does, while simultaneously generating somewhat similar values of advantage while having 5 life instead of her 4 and Pudding. It was just all around really bad. The other thing is Gravity Blade bottom decking her cards is a problem. So this deck can tech, put in, grab blade, and draw an extreme amount of cards, recovering what it counters. The black-green matchup is rough for both players, but she is a strong aggro choice for the meta, period. Poor TCG is still one of the strongest 3 Dawn starts in the game. That's only a 5/7 on turn 2, okay? That's extremely powerful, and that's a 7 every time that you don't get rid of the card. By turn 2, that means you have 4 Dawn to get rid of a 7k. It's not likely. The only way that that really happened before, if you were Lucci, would be to Ice Age the ETG, reducing it down to a 2, swing with Lucci for 5, and play Broke to get rid of it. You can't do that anymore because Ice Age is banned. This literally leaves Lucci of no counterplay to poor TCG at all. And they still have a 5k on the board that will attack you next turn, and the leader. On top of it, they also, and it's not listed here, they have Black Moria that can just basically allow them to catch up in all their Dawn and continue the bull crap throughout the entire game. And then even Black Moria, even if they don't have a play, will still act as a draw for them at the end of the turn. She also answers counter aggro strategies very well due to removal and counter aggro board spam. She literally produces as many bodies as other aggro decks do, and she has removal built into the Niji. She can bounce cards to your hand or KO low to the ground cards. She can play a blocker in Yonji. She can reduce the power of your res hit cards with EGG and just have free cracks at the cards. She can play 2 bodies at turn 2. And literally Porsche is a top 5 search for like a blocker or something else, right? Like it's just a ridiculous card. And quite honestly, like I just don't see a reason why she's not the best aggro deck in the game. I just don't see why she's not. Counters aggro through hand replenish for 4 cost Reiju. One of the other reasons why it's extremely hard to kill her is because she gets to counter 2 or 3 cards and then next turn just draws 2 or 3 cards. And it just feels awful. I mean, it feels like getting through that and having to deal with the board and trying to kill her when she's just bringing crap back from the grave and being at 8 Dawn and then playing Judge and getting 5 cards. It's like, it feels impossible. It feels actually impossible. And some of the attack patterns, once Judge gets on the board, insane. Judge is also a hard counter to the effect of Bonnie, although Bonnie can probably do a little bit against her now. I mean, I don't know what the check to this deck is, but we're probably gonna have to figure something out. She additionally has a Gecko of her own and Judge and will break you late game. Like if she's healthy with a good hand size and she plays Judge, you're cooked. I mean, you won't win. You basically have to kill her right there on the spot or you just lose. And she's gonna get more support in the future. I expect Reiju will be literally like pining for the top. So grades of the list addressing the meta. I believe that this ban list does address the meta. We gutted Black, killed BY, and remove Dofi effectively from the meta will cause a significant shakeup. So we're gonna give that an A+ in terms of addressing the meta. In grades of the list in terms of hit, now this is my opinion and strap in because it's a lot, but I'm gonna give it an F. While I'm happy that there is a meta adjustment and Dofi and /BY are gone, this list definitely went too far. Jinbe hit just killed Boa when there were other hits to Dofi such as 4-cost Law, which is getting an alt art, so they won't hit it because it's a selling point. 2-cost Teacher Dofi himself. BY could have been banned and Gecko could still live with another hit such as 4-cost Rebecca or Spandine, and I just don't understand how they didn't see this. They should have just banned the leaders. I don't know why we're trying to let Dofi live and BY live when they've reigned for 4 formats. They could just be banned and we could just move on with life. Ice Age is way too far. It's a hard -1 trigger life cushion against low to the ground aggro decks like Zero. Black will now have a much harder time to deal with high cost cards, and this was way out of left field. If somebody would have walked up to me and told me, yeah, they're for sure hitting Ice Age, I would have literally looked at them like they're crazy. This on top of the Gecko hit is just way too far. It's one thing to remove Gecko, but to remove Ice Age and Gecko from them, I guess Black is just not supposed to be relevant at all. Gecko ban kills Gecko leader and leaves literally no good top end for Black. Reiju was mad random and completely unjustified. There is literally no metric data or meta-analysis that pointed to Reiju ever being a problem, or Yellow for that matter. I literally cannot. If someone can explain this to me in the comment section below on how this ever came to be a decision that they would make and saying that this was a problem to adjust in the middle, I'd love to know. I'd love to hear any rational explanation for this. And you know what the reality is? You're probably not going to be able to give me a good one. You probably won't. This is probably going to be the #1 reverse ban I think that they're going to put on the list and take it right off. I mean, I'm so stinking serious. Unless they know something in the pipeline that is going to come down to make this card overly broken, I have no idea why this card is banned. This is just completely insane to do. Even for the foreseeable next 2 formats of EBO2 and OP11, Yellow is literally unplayable because of this hit. It is unplayable. I personally believe they could have achieved the same outcome without these hits and it would have been just fine. You could have just banned BY, you could have just banned Dofi, and you could have just banned Rebecca or Spandine, and you murdered Lucci. You really nerfed Black if you hit Rebecca. You still gave Black the ability to play a couple cards and do something with Gecko, and now not have a completely and utterly shitty top end to play with, because literally you can't justify any of the other like Black cards at all. You can't justify Kuzan in a Blackbeard meta. You can't justify Isha in a Blackbeard meta. You can barely justify a Sabo in a Blackbeard meta. You can barely justify a Stussy in a Blackbeard meta where Shanks exist. I mean, it's just completely insane. And now Black is just dead. It's just completely dead. For the Jinbe, I mean, Boa didn't need help being any worse than she was. Okay, she just didn't need any help being any worse than she already was. And they somehow managed to do that. They managed to hit 1 out of 4 easy targetable cards. You could have hit Dofi, you could have hit Teach, you could have hit Law, you could have hit 4-cost Boa, you could have Perfume from her, you could, I mean, I can name a few more. You could have Grab Blade and you could have hit Pudding. But you chose to hit Jinbe and nerfed Boa in the process. Even if I say that Gecko and Jinbe are good hits, 50% of this list is bad because Raigo and Ice Age are on it. Therefore, I give it an F. I mean, yes, they addressed the meta, so that in that regard, it's good. But in grades of the actual hits itself, what I'm going to objectively say is the impact on a game, this is an F. We killed 2 decks that weren't even relevant. You tore Doflamingo down in a way that he still might even be playable, and you just made it impossible for Black to ever remove any top end, which means aggro decks and aggro decks that go tall, really tall, like Shanks, will just completely destroy Black. Anytime you sit down against him, you're gonna get destroyed. And now it's like literally on Usopp's shoulders to carry Black into the future besides Blackbeard. And if you're not one of those 2 decks for Black, you have no hope. And if you're trying to be a control removal deck, it's Usopp or nothing. So I mean, it's just, this is just so bad all the way around. And that Raigo hit, man, murdered an entire color in one foul swoop. I literally think the only playable, this is my true opinion. I said that Katakuri and Pudding are somewhat playable, but if it's a Blackbeard dominant meta, you can just forget it. That means the only playable deck that's yellow is Kid. And the reason why the new green yellow Law is not going to be good is because if we're in an aggro meta to counter the Teach, green yellow Law is going to get destroyed. Flat out search and destroyed. It is bad. It is going to be extremely bad. This Raigo hit just murdered all of yellow in one foul swoop while promoting Teach to be at the top and kill everything else. So I mean, I can't give this ban list anything other than an F. Grades of the list overall. So this is going to be my like personal feelings opinion. So I'm going to get into my feels for a second. I'm going to give it a B+. Now, while I realize I just ripped this list apart, I was extremely desperate for a shakeup like many people were. And I really want you to pay attention to this. I was really extremely desperate for a shakeup like many people. I cannot tell you how annoying it was to play against Dofi, BY, Dofi, Purple Luffy, DY, Dofi. I cannot tell you how annoying it is to do that over and over again. Then the occasional Lucci. I was just sick of it, dude. I was so sick of it. I was so desperate for a shakeup. And my feelings on this and my objective analysis of what it's going to do to the meta and what they did to the game are kind of separate, if that makes sense. I really needed a shakeup. I was actually getting livid every time I sat down against a Dofi player. Like, why is this deck not gone? How much longer are we gonna have to? It's been almost 4 formats now. Gecko is going to be a community favorite hit, so congrats to y'all who wanted this hit and got it. I feel this list is gonna be well received by a lot of people. They're gonna be happy that Gecko's gone. They're gonna be happy that Ice Age is gone for some random mad reason. They're gonna be happy that Dofi is nerfed and hopefully like it phases him out. But again, there's a chance it doesn't. So that's gonna be kind of an issue. Meta changes were definitely necessary, and I wanted to see meta change. If I would have had to mind-numbingly pick decks that counter Dofi at a regional event, I would have actually just wanted to rip my hair out because it's annoying. Even like Lucci, which is like really strong in a Dofi, just loses to not drawing cards that like actually help you. I mean, because like when they open like double Boa Jinbe and you don't open Brook early, you're cooked. Like there's just no other way to say it, dude. Switches to probably a more aggro meta, which I'm gonna like kind of put a like little exclamation point of caution here. This is not that, like, that's not healthy. Like, aggro metas, Hodor metas of just like I beat your face in are not skillful. It's where bad people win because they have a card that has rush printed on it, and it's not good. And don't even try to justify to me, oh, you need to be good with attack, some consistent dawn value swings and all this other stuff. Stop it. That crap is so fundamentally easy to do that it is literally just Hodor, and rush just takes all skill out of the game. Like, what's the point of having summoning sickness so I can either attempt to deal with the card or prepare for what I need to do about the card in the future, and playing around whether I can do something here or there or counterplay it in a not my turn but the turn after, and all this other stuff. It takes all those decisions out of the meta because the card's already getting value and needs to be addressed immediately. Then when you address that card, if you address that card and then they like play another rush card, what happens? You just like lose. One of the reasons why like a lot of people are frustrated at the sealed events with Sanji being like the de facto best leader of sealed events or pre-releases, because it literally is just like a bunch of vanillas, 7k, everyone swings, everyone's unhappy because it's like I just lost because I didn't go first, or he saw this vanilla and I didn't, and it just like all these other stuff. It's just really terrible. Like it's honestly not a good meta. And the worst part is that we lost checks to this. We lost checks to this with Ice Age. We lost checks to this with Lucci being nerfed and Gecko being gone. I mean, I hope you're ready for whatever this is. So get ready. I'm excited to play Blackbeard and Usopp without worrying that Dofi will just ruin every tournament or never see a BY Luffy 9k again, hopefully. I'm okay with seeing it if they print a card that can like bring one baby back, but two babies, 9k, double Sabo bullshit. That stuff needs to stop. It just needs to stop. I do hope they print some cards to bring BY a little closer to being good, because with this Gecko nerf, he's completely unplayable. And with Reiju, he has no chance. Literally, they gutted him 3 different ways by doing this. But I hope they do like a Sengoku and EBO2 that is like for Navy, but like Three Brothers, like maybe like a 6/6 Garp that just plays one baby from the trash. Maybe it has blocker, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. I think that would be kind of cool. I don't know what you could do for that, but I think that would be fair. Not Gecko, which is an 8/9 that just like vomits 2 cards, and like a Nami and another one to have like a 2-1 split on life, 2k plus on the leader with 1 life back. It's a 2-1 split I'm talking about. And then you're just off to the races playing another Gecko while having 1 life constantly over and over again. Like, that's the crap I hope doesn't exist. But who knows what Three Brothers support will come out in the next set where they're going to do. I'm not sure if it's 12, because I know that the East is in 11. I think there's a Three Brothers set coming out. So overall, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on that bell for notification. A lot of you guys who watch my content don't subscribe. If you do subscribe, it would greatly help me out a lot, and I super appreciate it. And I always appreciate you guys always. I look forward to your comment sections on this list. Let me know how you're feeling temperature wise on this ban list, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. It's Marcus from TCG Discussions signing off. Laters.
起きろ。起きろ。起きろ。